Right, okay then. Hello everybody, and good evening, and welcome to the latest in our series of everything but editorial events. And tonight we are going to be talking about production. My name is Erica Smart, and I'm an events officer for the Society of Young Publishers in Oxford. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a development editor at Oxford University Press. And in our ELT division, by the way, yes. So first of all, I'd like to give a bit of housekeeping. So as somebody has already pointed out, you won't be able to actually speak at the moment. We may take questions verbally later if you raise your hand, but at the moment what we're going to ask you to do is, if you have any questions throughout the event, if you can type them into the chat box, that would be great, and then we will take questions at the end, and we would like lots and lots of questions, please. So do feel free to speak to our wonderful panelists tonight. Now, we also have captions for those who are hard of hearing. And so all you need to do to enable the live transcript is to go to the bar at the bottom of your screen. It's got 3 dots where it says more, and then you just click on the button which says enable auto transcription. Okay. Again, any questions with that, just put them in the chat box, and my wonderful colleague Julia will help you out, I'm sure. Okay, so tonight we have 3 wonderful guests to tell us all about their roles in production. We have Cristiana Caserini, who is a senior production assistant at Bloomsbury. We have Eleanor Masterman, a production assistant at Frontiers. And we have Florence Hassall, who is an assistant supplier operations specialist, I think I've got that right, at Oxford University Press. So welcome to you all, and thank you very much for being here tonight. So let's get started. Right, okay then. So first off, can you tell us, what exactly is production? What is your department? What is your production department? And what is it sort of you do generally? And also, can you tell us a bit about your company or the division of the company you're working in? So who would like to go first? Should we go with Cristiana? Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I work at Bloomsbury in the Adult and Special Interest Production Division, which is the division that takes care of our trade lists, and then also of our art book lists, sports, nature, and everything of special interest for adults. We also have 2 other divisions, which are children's and academic. And basically what production means in our company is the people that take care of the material aspects of the books and make sure that they are produced according to our standards, delivered on time, reach the customers, take care of any special needs of the book, such as, you know, special materials that a customer might need. Like when you see the Waterstone special editions, for example, we're the ones that organize that. And so we just basically care for the product of the book as an object.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, Eleanor, what about you? Can you tell us a bit about your company and a bit about your production department?
Yes, so I work for Frontiers, which is an open access academic publisher. So we publish journals. We also do ebooks, but our ebooks are edited collections of existing journal articles. So we're a bit different in that we don't actually do any physical work, we do everything online. So it's a little bit different to what you might think production is in perhaps book publishing. But basically our job in production at Frontiers is we get the accepted manuscripts from the editorial team, we send them off to the typesetters. At the end of the process, we receive publishers' proofs from them, which is where the author's corrections have been implemented. We check those and then we publish them. And so our job is to kind of do those things, but then also to do everything in between that will and sort of remove anything that will stop it from getting to the end. So we answer queries from authors, answer typesetter queries, and we have to send reminders so that authors check their proof corrections and everything. So yeah, getting it from point A to point B, basically.
Okay, thank you. And Florence, what about you?
Yeah, so I work for Oxford University Press. We have 3 divisions. So we have academic, English language teaching, and education. I work in academic journals production specifically. And as Eleanor said, we work on manuscripts from when they're submitted to us by the editorial officers, and we get them through all the different processes that they need to go to. So copy editing, proofreading, typesetting, all of that. We basically manage that process and get it published online and in print for a lot of journals.
That's fantastic, thank you. So you all work in the same department of production, but 3 quite different companies there and roles. That's very interesting, thank you. And now more specifically, what do you do in your job? I mean, can you tell us maybe what might a typical day be like? I mean, is there even a typical day? Eleanor, can we go with you first this time?
Yeah, of course. So a typical day for me is, so when I come in first thing in the morning, I look after the immunology journal. That's my one that I look after. So I check the email from the typesetters that we receive daily, which tells us how many publishers' proofs are going to be coming in that day. And I look to see how many we've got left over from yesterday if we didn't manage to finish them. And then I sort of assess how much there needs to be done. I usually start with the publishers' proofs because they tend to be the most pressing of the responsibilities. Get as much done as I can on those. Then I move on to accepted manuscripts. So then I spend a bit of the day sending a lot of those to production so that we've got a few more in the pipeline. And then throughout the day, I tend to just be answering queries. So I'll answer emails from authors, interim queries from typesetters saying things like, oh, we're not quite sure if this needs to be in bold or underlined, or oh, we don't think that we've got an ethics statement for this article, can you check? So yeah, just to break up the day, I do a little bit of from each of all of those. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Cristiana, what about you?
Yeah, so as an assistant, I was working mostly on reprints, which are titles that have already been handled by someone, but we need to reprint because they're so popular that people still want them, and we need to print more. So a typical day is a typical process is I receive an order from sales who are like, we need to print more of this particular book, and I need to look at suppliers who can produce it for us, at what cost, get prices for them, decide if the prices work or not, and then place the order with them, have a look at materials. I work on both mono and color books, which means black and white books or color books, which have 2 very different processes. They're printed in different countries, for example. So I work with, the Far East, India, Australia, the US. I work with a bit of everywhere in the world, which is really exciting. And then I get to place the order, make sure that everything is printed and bound in time, make sure that the colors are correct if it's a color book, and then make sure that the books are put on a boat and arrive in the UK and then get distributed to all of our customers. And in the meantime, I will also do text corrections and cover corrections if we need them. So I'll take care of that as well, and work with the editorial and design departments. And yeah, just generally take care of all of our books and make sure that they're pretty and lovely and get here in time.
Brilliant. So you have a lot to do in your job. And finally, Florence, so what do you do in your job?
So I guess my job title is a little bit different to the other 2. I'm an assistant supplier operations specialist. It's basically because OUP journals production has teams who are centralized around a specific function. So my team looks after the different typesetting suppliers, and in my case, freelancers. So I manage all of our freelancers. Out of the 400 journals, about 150 have freelance copy editing. And basically, day to day, I am testing new freelancers for journal vacancies, reviewing their tests, reviewing the quality of some of our freelancers' work if we've had issues raised to us. I also manage a bit of the invoicing as a kind of small part of it. I answer a lot of emails. I answer a lot of copy editor queries about different style points for different journals, because our list has lots of different journals with lots of different styles. and also working with my team to manage the other suppliers where they kind of come into contact with freelancers.
That's great. So it sounds like a lot of all your days is spent doing a lot of sort of, dealing with other departments, which is great. Okay, now can you, going back a bit, can you tell us a bit about your background? So how did you come to be in your present role? I'll tell you what, we'll start with you first, Florence, if that's okay.
So I graduated from university last year in the middle of the pandemic, and I was kind of, I was looking for any role that I could, but I specifically didn't really want to be in journals production, or journals specifically, because that was what I was really interested in from, when I figured out that publishing was what I wanted to do. So I came in from that background. I did my undergrad and I was applying to all these jobs remotely, and I just happened to get quite lucky in getting this interview. And yeah, I kind of came straight from university into it with a bit of experience with SYP. I did the mentorship scheme, for example, but no specific work experience sort of to speak of.
Okay, oh, that's great. So yeah, that's good. So you're in the early years of your career at the moment. Yes,
yeah,
fantastic. Okay, right. Oh, sorry, yes. And so I think we'll go to Eleanor next. I think you have a bit more experience, don't you? How did you come to be in your present role?
Yeah, so I ended up on the MA in Publishing Media at Oxford Brookes University. And I did that because from my undergrad degree, which I did at Leeds, they had the option on my course to do like not a traditional dissertation, but one where you got to print and bind your own work, and you got to do sort of academic editing and creating basically an edited collection. So I came into publishing from that kind of point of view, and that I found that really, really interesting. And so I already had my head turned a little bit towards academic publishing specifically, much like Florence. But when I went on the Oxford Brookes course, there was a specific module which was on academic and professional publishing. So that's why I was really drawn to that course in particular. And it was great, and it was really current and up to date, and it really helped me understand what things like open access were, and sort of, what are the current issues that are happening in academic publishing. So I really appreciated that. I also got some work experience at Princeton University Press for a few months, which was just interning as kind of like a general person. So I was originally working in the rights department, but then I also did some sort of publicity stuff. I just kind of like a general helper, really. So yeah, after that, I was like, actually, I really, really do want to go into journals publishing, and I found this job. And I was quite interested by the fact that it sounded really different to what we got told production was on our course, because obviously it's very book production focused. There's all these things about like what B format was, and I was like, I don't really know what this means. But my job is more what I thought would be an editorial job. But so it's kind of opened my eyes a bit to go, actually, I can do a lot of the duties that I wanted to do when I was interested in getting into editorial, but as a production assistant. So win-win.
That's very interesting, actually, hearing you say that yes, you might like the actual things you do in editorial, but that doesn't limit you to being purely in editorial. There are other things out there. That's great. Okay, thank you. And Cristiana, what about you? What's your background to the role?
So I did a very general communications degree in Italy in undergrad, and then I did a publishing MA at City in London. And that's, I already knew I wanted to get into publishing. Trade publishing specifically is what interested me. But to be honest, I would have been open to any opportunity. And then I was attracted to this role specifically because it gives me the opportunity to work with a lot of other departments. So it's a very, very good entry role where I get to see, what the marketing department does and what the editorial department does and the design department does, even if I don't work in those directly, but I do work with them a lot. And in my day-to-day job, I talk to them basically every day. So what attracted me to it was, first of all, I was interested in the material aspect of the book. So it's, treating the book as a beautiful object and making sure that it's beautiful and that people want to buy it. And then getting to talk to a lot of people and getting a lot of experience really fast. It's a very, very steep learning curve. and you get to learn a lot, even just in your first year of it. And then I just fell in love with it, and so I stuck with it, and I'm quite happy now. But yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's good to see another fellow City post-grad alumni. Yes,
Nice.
I at City as well. So yeah, and also, as we can see there is a lot out there, as well as just the trade side of publishing, and it's very interesting. As I said, I also work in the English language teaching division, so I'm not in trade, and yes, I can totally agree with our panelists here in terms of it is very, very interesting. So yes, thank you. It's good to see three people at so different stages of their careers as well. It's very interesting. Right, so going back to your current job, what are some of the things you particularly like about your job? And is there anything you dislike? Though please try not to spend too long on the dislike side if you've had a bad day. But yes, tell us what you particularly like about your job. Let's start with Cristiana again.
Yeah. So a thing I really like, and I fell in love with production because of it, is the fact that I get to spend a lot of time comparing materials. So I'm a creative person. So I did arts in high school, so I'm a very creative person, and I really liked, getting to stroke the spine of the book and getting to look at the pretty colors and go, oh, this would look fantastic with the bird on this cover. So that's an aspect of my job that I really enjoy, and I quite like the precision of it, and the fact that you have to have a very good eye for detail, and you get to develop that during the on the job. And working on color books specifically, you have to develop quite a keen eye on, that vase really needs to be that type of red, because that's the type of red that the artists use, for example. What I don't like about my job is sometimes it can get quite high pressure, because you need to deliver books on time, and sales of the books depend on it. It can sometimes be a bit pressuring, where sales will order a reprint very late, for example, and you're stuck with having to scramble. But I think that's an aspect that every job has at some point. But that's definitely the thing I dislike the most about it, if I have to think of anything.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and what about you, Florence?
So I think there are always two things that stick out to me when I'm talking about my job, what I enjoy about it. The first is the variety of things I do in a day. Like, I'm doing so many different things. I'm working on my communication skills, and I'm communicating both internally and externally. I'm spending time with the copy. I'm spending time figuring out different processes. So I also work with virtual editorial offices, and so I'm looking at the peer review process as well in some sort of detail. There's a lot of variety in it. And the other thing that I really enjoy about it is being in the copy so much. So because I'm testing freelancers, because I'm reviewing their quality, because I'm, sometimes I'm having to put a proofreader onto a journal, I'm in the content so much. I really enjoy being able to kind of develop, as Cristiana said, develop that eye for detail, be kind of looking at these, world-leading journals, and just really being in the words, basically, being in the content, being in the words. And if I'm thinking about things I don't enjoy, I would say it's not that I don't enjoy it, because it's very tailored to my skill set, but the job does require a lot of reprioritization. I suppose there's always things that you're going to have to be dropping, and always things you're going to have to be picking up, and you're never going to get everything done in a day. And some people maybe aren't a big fan of that, and it does get stressful, but that's kind of the only negative, is having to constantly be juggling lots of quite important things.
Yeah, so well, I'm sure we can all relate to that. I certainly can. It's you do need sort of more than two hands sometimes, don't you? But that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, and finally, Eleanor.
Well, I think it's really interesting that as I was listening to both of those answers, I was thinking of my own answer, and a lot of it was kind of the direct opposite. Things that you guys like about your jobs are things that do not really happen in my jobs, and I kind of like the opposite. So when Christiana, when you're talking about how creative you were and how, you know, you get to explore all the different kinds of materials that you use, when you're working on a portfolio of journals like Frontiers, the important thing is that everything is the same, and your job is to kind of, we don't want any variation, you know, if there's something that looks a bit wrong, we have to get rid of it. So I really enjoy the kind of looking at something and going, something's off and I can't quite work out what it is, and the sort of the joy when you find out what it is. That sounds really boring, I know, but honestly, I love the routine. It's such a fast-paced environment because we have so many articles. I can't remember the exact figure, but I think that our team has something like 1,200 articles a month to publish. So we get them coming in, we have to check them really fast, and we have to just keep it moving. And instead of, you know, spending time in the words and, you know, looking at everything in detail, it's almost the skill of trying to do that, but also be really fast as well. So there's nothing like the kind of rush that you get at the end of the day after you publish like 25 articles that day, and you can be like, I've earned my dinner, you know. So yeah, really different, but very interesting. Oh, and what I don't like, the only thing I would say that I don't like is that in Frontiers, our departments are really quite sort of insular from each other. So in production, we kind of only really speak to other production people because there's about 50 of us, and the other departments are very far away, and we don't fully understand what they do a lot of the time. So yeah, I guess something could be improved there in terms of communicating between the different departments. But yeah, it's nice. It feels like a big team.
Okay, that's fantastic. So lots of different elements there that you all sort of like and dislike, which is really quite interesting. Okay, so and your point, Eleanor, that you just made about working with other departments or not working with other departments, actually that kind of leads me on to my next question, really. I was going to ask people, so which other people outside of your department do you have regular contact with, or maybe not in your case, Eleanor, but I was going to say, sort of, does your department work alongside other departments at all? So maybe, Christiana, we go to you.
Yeah, almost everyone at varying degrees. So I talk to editorial and design and sales and operations daily, because that's a big part of my job, is making sure that all of the bits come together and go where they're supposed to be. So I talk to them almost every day. I will talk to rights and special sales sometimes. So they, you know, when they order something for a specific client, like Waterstones or something like that, they'll come to me at that point, but we don't talk every day. And then I'll talk to marketing and publicity sometimes again, but that's mostly because of my specific role in the team. So I know, for example, my manager or people who are more senior than me do talk to them quite often, because they're more involved in that sense, working on front list titles, which are, you know, new publications, so they need to be quite heavily pushed by marketing and publicity. But yeah, I will say we talk to basically everyone in the company on our trade side. Obviously, like I talk to academic people because we're friends, but not because we work together. But they're lovely, they're amazing. But the people that work on the same sort of part of the company, so all of the trade side, all of the children's side, and all of the academic side, I think production speaks to them every day, basically. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, fantastic, thank you. And Florence, what about you? Who do you work with, or what other departments?
So I personally, I guess the main department I would work in collaboration with is editorial. So the publishers who kind of have their list of journals they specialize in, they come to us with things that they need to make happen, basically, in production, or they come to us with concerns, that sort of thing. The department more generally, because there's people who do different things, also collaborate with marketing, with special sales. Like there's every point of production touches every point of the process. So me personally, only really with editorial, but the department more widely, any department you can think of in publishing journals, production will collaborate with.
Okay, that's great. And Eleanor, can you tell us any more about, I mean, do you ever work with anyone else?
Yeah, so I feel like I maybe expressed myself slightly wrong when I said that before. It's not that we don't work with others, it's just that we find it sometimes difficult to understand what their jobs are, because each of the departments, you know, they know their own processes very, very inside out, whereas I don't fully understand what the other departments do. And I think that's because we don't have a typical setup, whereas most publishers will have editorial, production, marketing, things like that. What you might call our editorial team is actually split into 3 different departments. So we have pub dev, which is publishing development, and they do the kind of business direction, acquisitions kind of stuff. You've got RevOps, which is review operations, and they handle all aspects of peer review. And then we also have research integrity, which we call RI, and they deal with all the potential like ethics issues, and they make sure to check if they're conflicts of interest and things like that. So the main departments we do work with are RevOps and RI. So if we've got a query about an ethics statement, or if the authors are trying to like delete the ethics in the proof corrections, we'll go, hang on, no, this isn't right. And so we'll contact RI. Yeah, and if there's any queries about the manuscript or anything that's happened during review, we'll contact RevOps. So
brilliant. Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see how all these different departments are interlinked and we're working together. Okay. And right, so what about this? Finally, one last question. So what about your department? Do you work in big departments, or did you work in a small department? What is the size of your department? And also about the future, I mean, can you tell us, are you working from home? Are you going to be continuing working from home? Do you know? And how's that going for you? So we'll go with Cristiana first.
Yeah, so my department is 8 people, about to become 9, because we're hiring a new assistant soon. So it's quite a small-ish department. So we do a lot of things personally. So we do a lot of things. We are working from home at the moment. Yes, we were supposed to reopen this week or not, due to everything going on. But we are probably going to be reopening in September. A lot of operations on trade specifically, and then on children's, are quite difficult to do remotely because we work with physical books, production especially. It's been interesting. It's been a challenge, and so we're all quite happy to be getting back to having our proofs in our hands, and that will be quite nice. Yeah. It's a smallish department, but we're not alone. It's fine.
Great. And what about you, Florence?
So Oxford University Press's journals department is about 40 people split into 4 or 5 different teams doing different things. So it's quite nice to have such a big department where you're all working very collaboratively together on different things. With regards to home working, so we're still home working at the moment and will be for another few months, a couple of months at least. But we're going to be moving towards hybrid working, which is basically in conversation with managers, individual colleagues are going to be deciding what works best for them, what works best for the business, kind of in collaboration with each other.
Yes, we'll see how that goes in the future. Be interesting to find out. Okay, and Eleanor.
Yeah, so we are actually we're allowed back in the office now, as of, when was it, the 21st, Monday. That was the original plan. Luckily, they've been able to stick to it because we've got sort of an office team whose job is to coordinate all of the, go back to the office and the distancing. It's not full capacity, but there are sort of hotel desks that you can come in and book on an app. So it's quite a smooth operation, which is nice. But actually, much like Florence, we're actually moving to hybrid working as well. And I think Frontiers have been really keen to get onto this because it's actually a Swiss company. So the main office is based in Lausanne in Switzerland. So the UK office was kind of an extra thing. And off the back of that, they've now opened new offices in various other countries. And they're also hiring remotely from completely different countries where we don't even have offices. So they've started hiring in Poland. They started hiring, I think, in Portugal and Ireland. So I think they're really trying to sort of maximize, great, we can get people whose contracts are only remote and they can come work for us and they don't even need to go back into the office. And yeah, considering the London lot are already physically distanced from the Swiss team. My team, when I joined, was entirely Swiss except me. So I was on my own. But yeah, I think they're just going to try and make it part of whatever happens going forward, because there's always going to be an element of remote working with us anyway.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's going to be a whole new world when this era is all over, isn't it, really, of working. That's fantastic. So, okay, so finally, just one last question before we go to the audience. If you were going to try and persuade somebody to take a job in production, what would you say to them? Why is production such a great department to work in? Just in a few words. Any volunteers to go first? Oh, don't shake your head, Cristiana. Okay. How about Eleanor?
This is an interview question. This is what you ask people in an interview. Yeah, I can go first if you guys
okay. Thank you.
Have a bit more time to think about it. Yeah. Oh, why didn't you tell me this before? But yeah, I think you should work in production because you will get a chance to work with a lot of people on a lot of fun stuff. And it's a very rewarding job where you get to literally hold the product that you make. So it's very, very rewarding. So I think that's why you should choose it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Okay, Eleanor.
Okay, I can't quite offer you the ability to hold a book in your hand because it will be a journal and it will be on the internet. However, I can offer you the novelty of pressing the publish button, which has not worn off, and it's really fun. So that's pretty much it, really. Just if you love routines, if you love, doing things according to a standard and having things just like run like clockwork and you don't even have to think about it. To me, that's the joy of working in production.
Amazing. Brilliant. Thank you. And Florence, is there anything you can add to that?
Well, I think this just proves how varied production can be, because I kind of say it's about the variety of what I do in a day that I really enjoy. I have chances to speak with so many different people, touch so many different departments, and especially we're talking about Society of Young Publishers, kind of early on in your career, it's the kind of department that really sets you up for success because you get to see every part of the process. You get to see a paper or a book from when it's submitted to when it's printed or published. It's every part of the process.
Brilliant. Thank you. I want to change my department now. Okay, well, thank you very much, Cristiana, Florence and Eleanor. That was interesting and very, very informative. I'm sure our audience will agree. Now we have some time to take some questions from our audience. So, Julia, are there any questions?
Yeah, we do. So the first one, I think Cristiana already touched a bit on it, but it would be good to also hear what the others have to say. It's how did working from home and working in production, when seeing the product is so important, worked for you? Who wants to go? Florence?
So I think, I come into it in the position that I've never been in the office. I don't know what publishing is like being in the office. But I think home working is for journals production, as Eleanor said, isn't so affected by home working because, it's all it's done is kind of push the movement towards viewing proofs online and moving away from print. Which is kind of the trend that we've been seeing very slowly happening anyway. So I think home working, it works for production, and it's kind of sped up where things are going with regards to online only stuff, with regards to open access.
Anything to add?
Yeah, no, I feel like this question is maybe not something that I can particularly answer because we don't have any physical products that we see anyway. So I can do my job exactly the same working at home as I could do in the office. Although I'm looking forward to the social aspect. I've also never been in the office apart from to go and pick up my laptop on my first day. So I'd like to, see the social side of things.
Gosh, that just shows how long we've been in lockdown with people who've never actually worked in the office. So yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And what about you, Cristiana?
Yeah, so I started off in the office, so there's been quite a marked difference. Speaking from a production point of view, it's been a bit of a challenge, especially on color titles, where the color is really important and you have to really look into it. In the office, we have a special box that has neutral light where you can look at colors. It's called a light box. And obviously we can't have that at home. It's a giant machine. Imagine it takes up a room. So obviously we didn't have that. So we had to rely on looking at proofs on an overcast day at our window, which is not ideal. It's definitely been a challenge. We've adapted quite well, I have to say. I think all of publishing in general has adapted quite well to it. So we still get, you know, our printers to send us stuff to our house. Our company has a sort of a courier system where when you get too much stuff in your house, you can just send it back to the office and they'll take it for you. But it's been all about individuals, you know, persevering and doing the best that they can in the conditions that they have. And luckily, nothing has gone wrong yet. Let's hope that it keeps that way. But yeah, it's been a struggle, but we've pulled through, I think, and we've done a good job. So.
Fantastic. I mean, that does sound challenging, actually. Yes, it's amazing how you've adapted. Brilliant. Thank you. Any more questions, Julia?
Yeah, we do have quite more. So what is the natural career progression within your department?
Oh, who would like to ask that one? Who would like to answer that one? Sorry.
Shall I go? Oh, sorry, no.
Florence?
No, I'm gonna say just because it's kind of relevant to what the process I'm going through now. So within my department, you start at assistant within whatever role you're doing, then you move up to core, then you move up to senior. So I've finally kind of met the period of time I need to work there. So I'm now applying for my core promotion, which is basically just you are doing everything in your job description, but without assistance, basically. And then kind of a couple of years later, you can move to senior, which is, you know, contributing at a much more department-wide level and kind of projects that have an impact on the department as a whole, and that's what you do at senior level. So it's kind of a very clear career progression for at least, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, and then, you know, potentially moving out of production or moving into a management role.
Okay, wow, that's really good, and it's nice to hear that there's a sort of natural progression there. That's good. Okay, Eleanor or Cristiana?
Yeah, so we've kind of got a similar sort of setup in Frontiers. So you start at assistant, and then after that you move to production specialist. Then it goes to senior specialist, and then it goes to management. So it's very much the sort of same thing. But what's really nice is that I think a year or so ago, it was much more well defined in terms of like, you're not allowed to do this until you're a specialist, and these are the things that assistants do. Whereas now I think because our volume's got more, has increased, and also because we get to do a lot of side projects on the side. I haven't really touched on this yet, but alongside the kind of daily routines, you can join things like working groups, and you get to, you know, pick a project on an area that you'd like to improve within the company, and you get to work on that. And it used to be that was mainly for specialists, and that you couldn't you couldn't be a manager of your own journal until you're a specialist. But I'm an assistant and I get to do that. So I think the lines are blurring a little bit, which is quite nice. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities if you're an assistant to kind of show what you've done. So I'm actually applying for my specialist promotion at the moment, similar to Florence. But yeah, I can write a list of things and say, well, I did this, this, and this as an assistant, therefore you should promote me, sort of thing. So that's quite nice.
Brilliant. And Cristiana.
Yeah. Best of luck to both of you on applying for your promotions. So our department works a bit differently in the sense that there is a clear path of progression, but no set time for it. So you know, out of, you know, general common sense, roughly how long you should be in a role, but there's no clear marker that the company will promote you at that point. It's all about who's above you in that sense. So I started off as production assistant, and I just got promoted to senior production assistant. And then from here, I would move on to production controller, and then from production controller to senior production controller, and then to production manager, and then eventually to head of production. If you know, that's the clear path that I would have. But it depends. For example, my department is quite small, which means that unless a new position is created and someone else fills it, which is the case of what happened with my current promotion, is that one of my colleagues got promoted and then everyone else got promoted after him, and now we're hiring a new assistant because of it. Otherwise, you can move to other departments that are maybe hiring, but if there's not, let's say, a free spot, then you can't just volunteer in the same way that Eleanor and Florence would be doing, which is a disadvantage. But So, you know, there's still a clear structure, but it kind of depends on chance, I guess.
Yes, I suppose they can't give you a job if there's not one available. Yes.
Especially in terms of budget, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always the way. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, and good luck to Eleanor and Florence with your applications, with your promotions. Okay, Julia, any more questions?
Yeah, sure. We've got a juicy one now. So what's the biggest mistake you could make in your role? Who wants to start now?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. Would anyone like to volunteer to answer that?
A very expensive one. That's my answer. So in trade especially, I think I've made some mistakes, obviously, you know, I'm human, we all do. And I think the worst mistake you could possibly make on trade production is something that costs your company a lot of money to fix. So we've had instances of something printing with like the wrong cover or something printing, you know, with the wrong images and things like that. And luckily they don't happen often, but they do sometimes. And then one other thing that can happen, which is not related to you, luckily, but it does happen sometimes, is that the boat sinks. And you have to reprint everything one more time, which is awful. But yeah, I think generally speaking, no mistake is unforgivable, but the expensive ones are the worst ones.
Gosh, I've never heard about a boat sinking before. My goodness, but I suppose it makes sense because all the books they're shipped, aren't they? Wow. Eleanor.
Yeah, so I thought about this for a bit actually. I thought it was a good question. It's hard because my first response is like, actually, when I came into production, honestly, this was what was in my brain. I was like, this sounds expensive. This sounds like if I make a mistake, it's the worst thing ever. But honestly, I've been so pleasantly surprised by the fact that, so we actually design all of our systems that we use. I think a lot of people use Biblio or something like that, whereas we use a kind of Frontiers one that we do. So like most things are reversible, especially when you're printing things online and it's not actually, I mean, obviously you've got to consider the publication ethics. So if I recently had a case, for example, where an author had sent in a new round of proof corrections that hadn't told anybody. So I hit publish happily. And then he was like, well, half of my article isn't there. Turned out I hadn't noticed that he'd uploaded extra proof corrections. And then I had to create what's known as an erratum. So, which was like, you know, due to production office's error, I didn't do all the proof corrections. The publisher apologizes, you know, so you have to release certain notices just so that everything is transparent and above board. But yeah, I guess that was that. And but really, it was no more than a bit of embarrassment. And also, that was the first erratum I'd ever done. So I was like, actually, do you know what? It's not the end of the world. So yeah, if anyone's thinking of getting into like online journal publishing, like it's not super easy. Like, oh, you know, you can do anything, but try not to think like that, because I think if you think like that, it can be easier for you to actually make mistakes. You know, just try and chill and be trusted that you'll be trained in a way that, you know, you're not going to make too many.
Great. So that's interesting to hear. And Florence, what about you? What mistakes do you think you could make in your job?
I think that those two are kind of they've covered it quite well. So it's the financial mistakes if I contract a freelancer for the wrong rate, or if I, you know, assign the wrong kind of invoice to the wrong journal, those sorts of things. Like they cause so many issues and like that need to be sorted out by so many different people. So that's kind of one that I'm always trying to avoid. And the other one is so in my case, is it if a copy editor comes to me and says, what's the call on this? There's no information in the style guide, there's no information in the parent style. How do I approach this issue? Sometimes they can be quite sensitive issues. Sometimes they can, you know, be this needs this many edits and I don't know if I'm able to do them. If I make the wrong call in advising them on that, that can lead to, you know, problems down the line, which can lead to an erratum. So yeah, I say those two are the kind of biggest ones. It's financial errors and it's like print publishing errors. But both of those, I've had a few mistakes I've made and they've always been fine and they've always been fixable. And you know, it's an easy thing to fix. There's never anything that someone's not willing to help you out with to fix, basically.
That's good to hear. Okay, thank you. Right, Julia, next question.
So we've got quite a few questions on skills. So
Right.
people want to know which kind of skills do you need to get a job in production besides the admin skills that are required for all of the jobs, and if there is any of the skills that you think is more important than others.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, what about if we start with you, Florence?
I think it's going to differ for roles, but I think for my role, communication is key because I'm communicating with freelancers all the time. I'm communicating with internal stakeholders. I'm putting together kind of communication like templates for like boilerplate text to send to editorial offices. So being able to have really good written and spoken communication was a key skill. As I mentioned before, prioritization, being able to manage a heavy workload and be able to know or figure out what you need to prioritize and what you need to move up your to-do list and what you can drop that day is very important. And I guess the third skill is problem solving. You need, a lot of the time I have a problem in a proof or a problem with a system or a problem with a process, something like that I need to dig into and figure out why this is happening, whether it's a copy editor, whether it's, you know, unclear in the style guide, those sorts of things that I need to dig into, and I need to know how to dig into in order to fix the problem and make sure it doesn't happen again. Because when you're working with, so OUP publishes about 400 journals, I personally work on 150 journals that have freelancers. You need to be able to very quickly and efficiently figure out what's going wrong on one particular journal at one particular time.
Okay, yes, brilliant. Eleanor and Cristiana, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd pretty much say pretty much exactly what Florence said is exactly the kind of skills you need. I would also maybe add on to that you need to, I mean, so what we do is we publish in PDF, HTML and XML. So the job description for my job said something like familiarity with XML, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to code and all of this. But really, as long as you can look at some XML and sort of recognize it for what it is, that's fine. So when we do our proof check, we search for things like, you know, I know where the title is, I know roughly where the author list is, and you can kind of just sort of suss that out if you just take the time to maybe like look over a few XML sheets and try and work out, you know, what component means what. Then I think that would go a long way, because it's one of the most sort of hard skills, I guess, that you'd find other than more traditional soft skills like, you know, communication and prioritizing. I think it would be a real standout thing if you can show that you know what XML is or what HTML is.
Yes, that's very interesting. These sort of more modern skills, if you like, they sound scary, but they're really not. I've touched on XML and HTML a little bit, and it's not as bad as you might think. So yeah, so it's a good one. And Cristiana, do you have anything to add at all?
Yeah, so I completely agree on the transferable skills. You know, good time management, good organization. You have to keep everyone in place. So good communication, being able to be quite harsh, but also quite nice, and being able to, you know, balance that. I will add, sorry, I blanked, being able to demonstrate that you want to learn, because I think, and it's quite an interesting experience, I think that's what landed me my job, is that I thought I had completely bombed my interview because I had no previous production experience. And they asked me to describe a book from a production point of view, and I didn't know half of the materials or half of what was on it. And I was like, it's shiny, you know, I don't know. So I thought I completely bombed it. And I think what really helped out was being able to say, well, I don't know what this particular finish on the book is, but can you tell me about it so I can know now? So I think that's really important. If you do want to get some pre-interview practice, I think there are some really just good websites on the, you know, internet in general, where you can just search book finishes and learn about, you know, embossing, spot UV, what type of cover is this, what type of formats, as Eleanor was saying, which are really easy. There's only like 4. So if you do want to get some hard trade production skills, you can just look that up. But really, I don't think it's necessary. And I think more than anything, it's the transferable soft skills such as being hardworking and, you know, being precise and having a keen eye on detail and wanting to learn about it. That will really help out.
That's great. There's some really good tips there for people. Thank you. Yes, and I think it's always good to remember that interviewers never expect you to know everything, and as long as you show willingness to learn, that is very important.
Yeah, before going to our next question, I wanted to add something as well, because I also have just started working in production, and I actually work with Florence, but we do quite different things. And a thing that is crucial in my daily job is knowing to know how to use Excel, but not how to use Excel on a very basic level. Like, you need to know all the different lookups and all the different functions you can do with it, because your job is going to be much easier once you know how to make things go faster, because we'll have so many things to do that is going to save you so much time.
That's a very good point. And it's very easy to learn how to do Excel. There's so much training online. I mean, I know OUP do offer training on Excel. I did some when I started. I think many companies do, but it's also very easy to find something online to help you with that. So good point, Julia.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got two last questions that I think we can also tie up together because they're quite similar.
Okay.
So they're asking where and which kind of experience people need before applying to a production role, and if you have any tips on how to land a job in production.
Great. Okay. Eleanor, how about we go with you?
Yeah, so this is something that I actually realized after I'd got my job, but I didn't have any specific experience in production before applying for this job. I had done my MA, which did have a production module, so I did know a little bit about that. But again, that was completely different to the kind of production that I ended up doing. So I don't actually think that it was that helped me. Honestly, before I got into publishing at all, I did about 5 years working customer service, which was just in various retail, food service type jobs. And I honestly think that was the thing that prepared me most for the job that I currently have. I know that it comes up a lot, the question of like how much to talk about non-publishing experience on your CV, but this was the first time I actually put all of my customer service experience on my CV, and this was the job I ended up getting. I'm not saying it was because of that necessarily, but you know, the amount of sort of dealing with typesetters, dealing with authors, trying to explain things to authors in an author-friendly way that's not too technical, and also just generally trying to speed things up and, you know, send reminders that aren't rude. All of those skills were ones that I learned, you know, working in a shop and working in a cafe. So don't discount yourself if you've got things like that, because if you make a strong case for yourself in the interview, I honestly think that you've got, you know, you're on.
Fantastic, thank you. And Florence?
So I think kind of, I guess the experience, like, you don't need experience going into this kind of like entry-level production roles, because it is about learning. Every company, every publishing house does things differently, so you're never going to have all the experience that you need for the role. It's always going to be a learning on the job kind of thing. I think it is the experiences that you learn. So I also worked in retail a lot. The story that I told in my interview that I've since been told, like that's the story that got us, was how I used to work in a chocolate shop, and there was a power cut in the middle of summer, and I had to solve the problem how to get the power back on. And kind of that was showing problem solving skills. That was showing that I could, you know, work well under pressure. That was showing I could prioritize properly. It's those kind of experiences that I think are really good and interesting to draw on if you don't have any specific published experience like I didn't. So yeah, it's kind of not being put off by applying to jobs if you don't have experience, because you're always going to be learning it. And the one tip I always give to people who kind of ask me for advice in job searching in production is to always read job descriptions, because different companies have so many different names for things, different names for roles. For example, in my team, roles are advertised as supplier managers, and you kind of look at that and think, oh, that's to do with procurement, that's not anything to do with production. Then you read the job description, it's all about, you know, managing the copy editing, all those sorts of things. So making sure you're reading job descriptions and really understanding how different companies frame their production roles is going to put you in really good stead to, you know, be applying to the right jobs, and you know, making sure that you can kind of tailor how you word things, how you're doing things to different types of production roles.
Brilliant, brilliant. And finally, Cristiana.
I absolutely agree with both of them. You don't need previous experience in production to work in production and to get an entry-level job. And I absolutely agree on retail, because that's what I did as well. So I used to work at Waterstones when I applied for my job. So if you want, retail but with books, I guess Waterstones or Blackwell's are a good bet. And they get you in contact with books, and they get you looking at trends and what sells and whatnot. So that's a good entry into publishing. And I know it's quite often brought up in interviews. I think what got me my job on the basis of CV is that my boss remarked on the fact that I was a hostess for a while. So I had to talk to clients and manage that and manage the product and stuff like that. So yeah, I absolutely agree. You don't need to know everything to apply for the job, and don't be discouraged if you don't have previous work experience, because they shouldn't really be looking for it. It's an entry-level job, especially if you're fresh out of university. They shouldn't expect 10 years of experience. So I think as long as you word your CV and cover letter and interview really well, where you go like, this is the skill that I can demonstrate by doing this job. And I have a friend, for example, who got a similar role in production, and she used to work as at a call center for Santander. So it's different jobs, same type of soft skills, where you deal with clients, you deal with organization and all of that, and you're going to be fine.
Yes, I think you're quite right. Never discount the soft skills you learn in other areas of your life that may seem at first glance unrelated. Yes, we all have those. So thank you. Right, I think we're coming up to the end of our time tonight. So I'd like to thank all three of our panelists, Cristiana, Eleanor and Florence. Thank you ever so much for joining us and telling us all about your job, all the duty details. I'm sure we'll all be keeping a keen eye out now for any job adverts that come our way in your department. And it's been great having you on tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Okay, so good night, everybody. And we hope to see you or hear from you at our next SYP event, which will be next month. Thank you very much.